Usually for Thanksgiving, we head out to go see family. Someone else always hosts. We typically help sponsor the host by paying for cleanup, etc. Our home is just too small to host the 30+ folks who typically show up through the day. This year that's obviously not happening. Other than us talking about not doing the usual, Thanksgiving didn't come up until yesterday. My kids have the week off from online school, and I was doing a puzzle with them before dinner when my husband walks in after work and says, "So did we get a turkey?" I looked at him and said, "Well, I know I didn't." "Did you?" He stared at me blankly and said, "No." "What do you mean? Do we need to get one still? Is it being delivered?" I shrugged and said, "I don't know nothing about no turkey." The kids and he looked so confused, so I helped them along and said, "I didn't buy anything. I didn't plan anything. No one said anything to me about Thanksgiving. Nobody offered to help meal plan, cook anything, do anything." He blew up yelling at me about how I should have obviously known. I said, "Why? I've literally never planned or made a Thanksgiving dinner in my life. The most I've ever done was help clean up or maybe peel the potato." I asked him why didn't he plan anything, why didn't the kids plan anything? Why is everyone waiting until the last minute and dumping it on me? He just sputtered and yelled and stormed off to his office and left me with the kids. We all had dinner, the kids cleaned up, and I was relaxing with some wine and a book after they all went to bed. My husband tore into me about how he can't believe I left this all to the last minute. Now there will be no Thanksgiving. How could I not be heartbroken to do this to the kids, etc. So I just looked at him and said, "Why didn't you plan? Why did you wait to the last minute to ask me?" He told me I was being for no reason and stomped off to go sleep in his office. He left without saying a word this morning. I followed up with my kids and asked them if they wanted Thanksgiving. They said they didn't care because the food isn't that good most of the time anyway. I work as well. We split chores, but there's no hard line. I do some, he does some. We both cook, and the oldest cooks as well. I just don't get why Thanksgiving is on my plate. Why, just because I'm a woman? A lot of people seem to think that my kids are like toddlers or something. They're old enough to help make the menu for dinners, help with cooking, etc. Anyway, I told my husband that if he wants to do some traditional Thanksgiving with all the fattening, carby, salty, beige food, he can go ahead and plan it and I'll help in the same capacity as always. If he wants me and the kids to cook something together, aka a normal, average Thursday, I'll continue with what was scheduled. The kids genuinely do not care. Thanksgiving doesn't mean anything to them. One of them has been asking for us to stay home for years. One of them barely touches the food as it, and the other one only likes to go so she can see her cousins. And she sees them all the time anyway. The middle kid already dug out another puzzle for us and they're just happy they're off school. Also, we don't do Christmas. My boyfriend and I have been together over a year and living together about 6 months. He's an extremely light sleeper. We never used to have problems, but I'm now on medicine that causes me to have more insomnia, so it's harder for me to fall asleep. Lately, we've gotten into fights because he's being absolutely unrealistic about any noise in general. I can't clear my throat quietly, sneeze or even yawn without him grumbling, groaning, or yelling at me at how loud I'm being. When I say yawn, I don't mean some exaggerated TV yawn, but literally the sound of me silently taking in and expelling air from my mouth 3-4x over the course of 2 hours sets him off. Sneezing is very rare and it's also quiet, but if I have to make any noise, I do it as silently as possible. But it's not enough for him. When I was extremely sick with the cold, he made me sleep on the couch because I was having a tough time sleeping without being able to actually blow my nose to breathe. But when he caught it a week later, I gladly let him sleep in the bed and help take care of him when he woke up in the night because he wasn't feeling well. I've argued with him multiple times that it's unfair for him to expect absolute silence and be mad over the air he hears from a yawn, but he just shuts me down and tells me to be quiet because I've disturbed him from being right on the edge of sleep. I understand that when you're half asleep you're particularly grumpy, we've all been there. but it winds me all the way up that I already constantly have to cater to the way he needs tons of space. Meaning I have to sleep pencil straight all night or on the side not facing him if I want to move my legs at all. And then this sound thing. I've had previous BFs who were heavy sleepers that snored, made lots of noise, and honestly that bothered me less than constantly having to be alert to his needs. He says that earplugs don't work and he only likes to hear the fan, so white noise is out of the question. I don't want to go downstairs because then I'll just stay up, and I don't want to keep taking melatonin every night, but I'm this close to not renewing our lease together next year if things don't change. It also makes me feel like if we got married and had kids, he'd just expect me to be up all the time dealing with the baby, so he can sleep, or complaining about his sleep, or if one of us was to have a chronic sickness that we'd have to sleep in different bedrooms, because of how selfish he is. My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text, and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away. I am 22 female, and I work full-time at a local steakhouse-style restaurant. There's a policy with the employees regarding free food based on the length of your shift, and the other day I was working a double, which meant I got 2 free meals, one at the end of my first shift and one at the end of my second. There are a few things we as employees can't pick for our free meals due to costs, but we still have access to nearly the entire menu. Another part of this policy is that if we pick something, and one of the ingredients required is almost gone, we're allowed to keep our pick and tell the customer that we're sold out of that particular item. This applies to all sides, salads, soups, etc. Usually though, if we say we're out, we really did run out regardless of employee meal picks. Anyways, on the day that I worked my double, We were about 2 hours out from closing and I sat a couple who were on a first date. Just assuming by some things they said, plus he name-dropped a popular dating app. When they were ready to order their meals, the girl just so happened to ask for sirloin. But that was the cut I chose for my second meal and we were down to our last one. I apologized and told her that we were out, and the pouted and told me she would need another minute to decide. Her date shot me a dirty look and told me he needed more time now, too, so I went to check on my other tables. They seemed to be having a good date, laughing a lot and smiling. But they were immediately quiet and standoffish every time I checked on them, and interrupted me with, "Just the check, please," while I was asking if they'd like any dessert. I brushed it off, as it's not the first time I've had a rude customer, and brought them their bill. He wrote a big 0 on the tip line and a little note that read, "Thanks for ruining my date. Hope your night sucks too." I told my coworkers during closing, who all agreed the guy was being an ass. But when I called up my dad the next day and the topic of work and those particular customers came up, he told me I should have been less selfish and just let the woman have the sirloin and that I should have picked something else. He told me they didn't handle it very well, but that young lady had probably been looking forward to that steak. You knew you could have given it to her and you didn't. I'm honestly a little disappointed in you. That really hurt my feelings and I've been wondering if I was actually in the wrong. I don't believe it was a money thing. The guy ordered a pretty expensive seafood dish and the girl had one of our pricier cocktails. The sirloin is not our cheapest steak option. Yes, I'm aware that it's a weird policy. But it's our policy and my bosses encourage employee satisfaction so that we can ensure customer satisfaction. I do not eat steak for free every day I work there. I have it once every 1 to 2 weeks.